Really, the big idea, if there was one point that we would want to take away, want to think about, really with all of Matthew 24 and 25, is be prepared. And that's been a consistent message for centuries, actually. No debate about that, about being prepared. Whatever a person's eschatology view is, end times view, whatever it is, there's a common theme, a unity in being prepared, because we don't know. We all agree Christ is coming back. How that unfolds is up for debate, of course, as we've discussed in past weeks among Christians, sincere believers. But what is a unified theme is that Christ is coming, and be prepared. And that's what Jesus is teaching in Matthew chapter 25. As we look at these verses here, we want to be mindful that it's connected with the last verses of chapter 24 that we looked at last week. We won't rehearse all that we went through last week, but I just remind you that at the beginning of Matthew 24, his disciples have some questions. You'll recall that, of course. It says in verse 3, Matthew 24, he sat on the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him. They asked him some questions. Tell us, when will these things happen? And what's the sign of your coming and the close of the age? And so Jesus is going through that teaching. And so there's this block, chapter 24, chapter 25, in the Gospel of Matthew. If you turn over to Matthew chapter 26, it starts out just by saying, when Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said this to his disciples. And he continues on with some other teaching. So there's this block, chapter 24, chapter 25, called the Olivet Discourse. And Jesus is explaining some things, describing some things concerning the end times. So last week we did look at, went through chapter 24. You'll remember that Jesus had the fig tree as an example. There was a lesson there for the disciples from the fig tree, and he emphasizes that no one knows the day or the hour. Only the Father knows the day and the hour. No one knows that. He went through the example or the teaching that two women will be here and one will go, one will stay. Two men here, one will go, one will stay. He says in verse 25, then who is the faithful and wise servant? And that's really the micro theme at this point. The bigger theme is end times, but right here at this point, who is the faithful and wise servant? And so he speaks of this master that set his household, or gave us the responsibility of his household to this servant. And we looked at in verse 45, to give them the food in the proper time. And I mentioned that there was some responsibility in that phrase that servant was to undertake. Blessed is the servant whom the master will find. And then he explains the wicked servant, what the wicked servant does. And that's all about behavior. What the behavior of the wise servant and the behavior of the unwise, the wicked servant. And what we're faced with in verse 1 of chapter 25 is a continuation. Our Bibles, of course, have a chapter break there, but when Matthew originally wrote it, there wouldn't have been a chapter break right there. And so he's just continuing, and that's the way we want to read that. He's continuing with this idea of a faithful and a wise steward, and unwise and unfaithful stewards, and what that looks like. So chapter 25, verse 1, Gospel of Matthew. Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. Now there's the point. The bridegroom is Jesus. The bridegroom is Christ. And the bridegroom was delayed. There's some teaching here. It's always in a parable. It's always the spiritual teaching we're looking at. I don't want to press the parable too hard, but clearly the word delayed jumps off the page. The bridegroom is delayed. He wants the disciples to know he's going to be delayed. They're going to be a while. The bridegroom was delayed, and they all became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, "Here is the bridegroom, come out and meet him." Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for your lamps, our lamps are going out." But the wise answered, saying, "Since there will not be enough for us and for you, rather go to the dealers and buy for yourselves." And while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward, the other virgins came also, saying, "Lord, open the door to us." And he answered, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day or the hour." So he's taking a picture that everyone knew very well about a wedding ceremony. There's the betrothal period. In those days, the weddings were arranged marriages. The parents would come together, and the bridegroom would need to pay a dowry. Something would need to be paid in this marital arrangement. And then that was the formal contract. That was the formal arrangement, the marriage. From that point forward, this man and this woman were married. The woman, the bride, lives apart from the bridegroom about a year, lives apart, separated. But the day will come when no one knows when the day has come, because the father has to say to the groom, "Now's the time. Go get your bride." Does that sound any wise kind of familiar to you? No one knows the day or the hour except the Father, but when that day or the hour comes, the Father tells the Son, "Go get your bride." And there's a loud shout. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. There's a loud shout. The bridegroom is coming. You want to be prepared for that day. Now, the context here, as we've already visited, I believe the context is the tribulation period. 7-year tribulation period. This is not teaching about the rapture. Although there are secondary applications from this passage that the church can gain from it. Mainly, be ready. Because the Lord's going to come when you don't know. Paul is very clear about that. When you don't know, the Lord is going to be a call for believers. But right at this point, the picture, we've seen the picture from chapter 24, flowing right into chapter 25. There's going to be people in this tribulation period of time. They weren't called. They weren't translated in the rapture. They're left here. And there'll be a day when the Son comes, when the Father says, "Now is your hour. Here He comes. Make sure you're ready. Make sure you're ready, Israel. And any Gentiles throughout the whole world, make sure you're ready when that day comes. You'll want to be real ready." So the Father says the bridegroom goes, and so He has His attendants. And they go with the bride, and they shout out, kind of like those angels will. Those attendants, they shout out for the bride. The bridegroom isn't there just yet. just yet. It's close, but they're leading the way. Now the 10 bridesmaids here, we don't want to make too much of the 10. It's just a nice number for the parable. But there's 10 of them. And the shout goes out, okay, it's time to go. Now see, we're told here in verse 5 that they became drowsy and they slept. And there's the application, in the immediate application of the tribulation. But there's also the secondary application of the time that we live in now. You get drowsy, you get tired. Drowsy and slept. But then here comes the call. There's the midnight cry. Here the bridegroom, come out to meet him. Okay. So what can we say about this picture that is given? Well, some were prepared and some were not. That's the continuing theme coming from chapter 24. Some were behaving in a way that they were prepared. They had the oil for their lamp. Now they had the lamps back in the ancient days, of course, and there were various styles of lamps. Some of them had a globe. Some of them were just a flat saucer on a stick with a rag on it that it had been dipped in oil. But if they had a little globe, it was just a little reservoir of oil. The point is there's oil in these lamps. And it's midnight. The time comes. It's the hour. It's late. It's unexpected time. It's dark. They need their lamps. So they hear the call. They get up to go. Some have a flask with them of oil. So they're ready for a journey, but then the others don't have extra oil. They just have what's in the lamp. Those are the foolish bridesmaids, because the point of it is they're not prepared. The wise bridesmaids were prepared. This could take an hour. It could take 2 hours. They don't know. The father has given approval. It's time. The bridegroom knows. They don't know. It might be 15 minutes. We shouldn't take anything away from that about the Lord's return, other than I'm just trying to paint the picture for you of the actual, how the wedding would have transpired. They don't know until they actually see the bridegroom. The wise ones are prepared. So when we look at the second parable as well as the parable of the talents, there's this preparedness idea and behavior missed in a lot of places today. As I've said repeatedly, your behavior, my behavior matters as it relates to our preparedness. A lot of talk about preparedness nowadays. Would be better if people were a little more focused on spiritual preparedness. Because a lot of people, the point is, another point I shall say, these bridesmaids, they look very similar. In fact, they are in fact bridesmaids. They look very similar. It seems that all 10 of them, that they know the bridegroom. They've all got lamps. They're all together. Some will give the appearance that they know the bridegroom and that they are ready, but they are not ready. If you will, they don't have extra oil. Application: there will be some in the tribulation time that look very much like they're the people of God. And they're not. They're not prepared. Secondary application today: there will be many that look like They're prepared. And they're not prepared. So behavior is part of what we have here. And for these bridesmaids, really it's readiness. Readiness is the issue. Are they ready? Are they ready at the moment? Are you ready at the moment today, church? Future end times, people living at that point in time? I hope none of you are living at that time. Could very well be that some of you are. When you are, you want to make sure you're ready. I don't plan to be there to help you along with that, but you better be ready and have your Bibles open, because you won't know when He's coming, and you're going to look like you know. And the door is going to be, Jesus is saying, the door is going to be shut. So, a couple takeaways already we have. If there's going to be this lengthy delay, Jesus is going to not come back. The Messiah is not going to return. And we can see that more clearly now than they might have in that particular hour, but not going to come back as quickly as they might had hoped. And it's going to be a time when things, it may prove to be more difficult than you imagined. People who are claiming connection to the bridegroom may find that their journey is more difficult than they had anticipated. And so there will be a great temptation to do a lot of other things, including becoming drowsy and sleeping. Be a lot of other things, and they'll find themselves unprepared for the Lord's return. Jesus is pushing on His disciples. Pushing, the point being, when He returns, when the shout goes out, it's too late. It's too late. You better be ready at that time. Not get yourself ready. Don't go and buy some oil. Go get yourself prepared for this event that's going to take it. It's too late. You won't have the time to get prepared. I've already said to you, there's the primary application. We want to keep that in focus. The secondary application today, it will be too late for you to get ready. So, that means we have to be alert. We have to be watchful. We have to be ready where our spiritual life is concerned, because we could lie to ourselves and convince ourselves that we're ready, and we're not. I'll repeat just one more time real quickly. These bridesmaids, all 10 of them, looked very, very similar. They're young. They're at marriage age. They're together in a place. Each of them has a lamp. There's probably more that we could take away from that, from the historical perspective. Many will look the part but not be ready. The bridegroom's delayed. But when he finally arrives, it's interesting just to do a little, you might want to on your own if you haven't already, just a little study on the ancient Jewish wedding and how that unfolded. And there's various descriptions of it. It changes a little bit in the description. But the bridegroom finally gathers the bride and takes the bride to himself. And there's a great celebration. In fact, there's a marriage feast. Some people that read their Bibles will hear echoes of the marriage feast of the Lamb. He takes his bride to himself, and there's a great celebration. So, in our understanding of end times, the picture of a marriage is very helpful, actually. There's going to be a waiting period. And then there's going to be a coming bridegroom taking the bride to himself, to the home, perhaps his father's home, to the home, the place that in my Father's house are many rooms, to the place where he had prepared. Now, at least one commentator says that, I didn't find this repeated, but there's all kinds of discussion about it. One says that in the ancient world that the bride needed to stay in the father's house for 7 days. In that kind of a picture, well, you immediately have that connection, don't you? 7 days in the house in the 7 years. But we don't want to leap too much into that. I'm just presenting that to you. That's something you be aware of in your own study. So anyway, there's this great feast. The point of all this is what Jesus is laying out. They were not prepared. People, you be prepared. There's going to be a delay. You will be tempted not to be prepared. You'll be prepared to be lazy. Slept spiritually. Yeah, you'll be prepared to be lazy. You'll get tired. Fight. Be awake, spiritually speaking. Okay, verse 14. For it will be like a man going on a journey. Here it is, the journey. See, now there's a connection from verse 5. See the delay? As the bridegroom was delayed, now it's going to be like a man going on a journey. Well, back in those days, a journey took a while. And so this man goes on a journey. He calls his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, another one 2, and another one 1, according to his ability. Okay, according to his ability. Then he went away. Kind of like the bridegroom. The bridegroom's delayed. This one, you get the point, Jesus. He went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he had 2 talents. The one had 2 talents, and he made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, there's another connection. Okay, we already have the word delayed and then on a journey. Now 19. After a long time, the master of those servants, Jesus, it's going to be a long time. Of course, who's to define what a long time, you know? I don't imagine they thought 2,000 years, but it's been a long time. And he came and he settled accounts with these servants. Verse 20, and he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. By the way, a talent, there's discussion, again, among the commentators, the scholars, on what a talent is. But everyone could agree on this. It's a large sum of money. They might say 3 months' wages. Others would say much, much more than that. But that's not really important to what Jesus is trying to teach here. He's saying something of great value, enormously great value, is given to these servants. Even 1 talent is an enormous amount to be given, let alone 2 or 5. Verse 21, his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. That's the issue. Faithfulness. Faithfulness. Okay, good and faithful. It's repeated. Look here. You have been faithful over little, I will set you over much. Enter the joy of your master. We won't have time today, but it'd be interesting to know, and we have studied this in the past, what is the joy of the master? When you're there, you're in a pretty fine place. Verse 22, and he also who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I've made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. Now, that word faithful being good, wise. You can wise and faithful servant. You have been, there's the word again, you have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. It's important not to just completely miss. The servants are rewarded well. It's not that the servant with the 5 talents was somehow of a better quality of a person or something, or the one with 2 talents of better quality of a person. They were both responsible. They were faithful servants in what they had been given. And that's a relief for a lot of us that look and say, well, yeah, but that's Billy Graham. I'm just me. Look at him. Yeah, well, you may be a 2-talent person. I may be a 1-talent person. Billy may be a 5-talent person. I don't know. God rewards faithfulness no matter what your talents are. Enter into the joy of your master. It's repeated, a repeated refrain there. He also, who had received 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man. And he continues, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. So, God obviously in the parable that Jesus is teaching here is teaching stewardship. Stewardship over the gifts that He has given each one of us. And when I speak of stewardship, when I speak of stewardship, of the gifts that He has given us, that includes all that you are. And that includes all that you possess. Everything. Everything you possess, everything that you are, is a gift from God. A thinking being, your ability to think is a gift from God. Be careful what you think about. Your ability to speak. Some people have their tongues cut out in this world, probably today. Your ability to speak is a gift from God. Be a good steward of how you speak. Your body is a gift from God, and He can take it away from you at any moment. Unless you think you're prepared, that would be a terrible thing for Him to take you and you not be prepared. Your body is a gift from God. Your knowledge of Jesus is a gift from God. The home that you live in is a gift from God. All of it, not the bathroom, not the second floor bedroom, all of it. All of your money, all of your wealth, every bit of it is a gift from God. The point is, are you being a good steward of it? Your faith is a gift from God. Would you presume to believe on the Lord Jesus Christ? Your faith is a gift from God. How is your stewardship of your faith? You taking care of that faith pretty well, are you? Just to help us along here, that's not the point of the message today. We've covered these things in the past. Be good for us to cover it again, I guess. But I included in your listening guide Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. You could recount those verses if you want, but I'll just read. Verses 1 through 10 would be very helpful to you and me who can't read those 10 verses too frequently. Verse 4, but God. He's talking about our lostness, our being dead in our trespasses and sins. Not sick in our trespasses and sins. Dead, spiritually dead, unresponsive to God. But God did something. He made us alive. That is a gift. You want to trample on that? Disregard it? He made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. Verse 8, for by grace you have been saved through faith. And this, pointing to the faith, this is not of your own doing, it is a gift of God. And we could spend the rest of the day going through Scripture verses to support this point, but we don't need to, and that's not what the point is today. But I'm emphasizing, you may say, you may be living under a bridge somewhere. Well, I don't have much to steward over. Look at all those people over there in Danville and Alamo and San Ramon. They got a lot to steward over. I'm laying down here under a bridge. Do you believe in Jesus? That faith that you have been given, which is supreme over all other gifts, is a gift from God. And how are you stewarding your gift of faith? Everyone has a gift from God, including your life, of course. Everything that you manage, everything in your life, your health. Yeah, that's something to get passionate about. Matthew, he uses that refrain in the end of chapter 24. There'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. The urgency of these things in verse 30 of chapter 25. And cast the worthless servant into outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. What do you think Jesus is talking about? He's saying, get responsible, get accountable with the gifts that God has given you, and don't squander them. It's not up to me to tell you how to be a steward over your gifts. It's up to the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will convict you on how to be a steward of those gifts. God expects, and I use the word intentionally, God expects faithful stewardship. And the time will come in the 7 years, at the end of the age altogether, or perhaps earlier for the church, the time will come when it is shown that individual was not a faithful steward. Again, they gave the sign, like the bridesmaids. They gave the sign. They're all stewards, by the way. You notice they're stewards. They're not just happenstance people. They work for the master. They have some kind of appearance They're not fooling the master, of course, but they have some sort of likeness with one another. There's a lesson in that. There's going to be a likeness among the people who are claiming the Messiah. Some will be bridesmaids that were not prepared. Some will just be flat out unfaithful stewards. So this unfaithful steward, what's he say? It's worth our time here to think about this a minute. Verse 24. He also had received the one talent, came forward saying, Master, I knew you were a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, have what is yours. But the master answered him, You wicked and slothful, which means lazy or shrinking or hesitating, you wicked and slothful servant. Now this statement is said with sarcasm. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather, and where I scattered no seed. You can hear the echo. Here's me adding to it here. Is that what you believed? Oh, yeah. You knew me to be a hard man, did you? You knew me to reap where I did not sow. Oh, yeah. You really knew me, did you? Yeah. I can see now by your own words, you really knew me. That's sarcastically said here in verse 26. Verse 27. And what he's saying is, if I was this mean, and if I was truly this hard, if you really believed that, well, you shouldn't have buried it in the ground. If you knew I was going to be hard, you ought to have invested the money with the bankers. Wouldn't you do that? If you had a hard master's coming and saying, what did you do with my talent, man? Well, at least I can give it to the bankers. You may not have been as skilled as the 5 talent. Obviously, he had more responsibility, and we're even told, according to their ability. Some individuals have more ability than others do. There's nothing wrong with not having that ability. The point is faithfulness. The 2-talent person has less ability than the 5-talent person, but he's faithful too. Verse 28, so take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents, for to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there'll be weeping and there'll be gnashing of teeth. There's several things that could be said and are said about this steward. But for me, what jumps off at me and could not remove from my mind this week, this steward, who looks like a steward, apparently did not want to be identified with the master. God expects us to be good stewards. Spiritual resources, material resources, our immaterial resources. It's an expectation. Now, apparently, This steward doesn't want to be identified with his master. Being a good steward of the gifts that God gives us means that we are willing to be identified with Him. Let me explain. The 5-talent steward apparently had to do some business. He takes the 5 talents, and now they're 5 talents more. He says, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. What does that tell us? He must have been a skilled businessman. He's rewarded, so he's not a crook. In the world we live in today, a lot of times it seems like the skilled business people take it on the chin. They must have cheated somebody. Well, that may be, but in this case, this servant seems to be very skilled at investing, at making 5 talents into 10 talents. And he's rewarded for it. He's called a faithful servant now. Now, the 2-talent person, same thing. Here's how I see it. If you're going to take 5 talents, or 2, and you're going to make something of it, wouldn't people ask a servant, man, where did you get the talent? You're a servant. You're not a master. What are you doing carrying around in your pocket? Couldn't carry it in the pocket, of course. What are you doing carrying these 5 talents around? I know you. You work for that guy. That's not your talent. He could get in trouble. A 2-talent man, the same way. Someone looking at you, hey, you're a slave, man. And slaves were highly regarded, obviously, because they're given responsibility in that culture. They're highly regarded. But you don't. That's not your talent. You don't have that kind of wealth. Who are you trying to fool out here making money off of what's not yours? Well, we might have something to say about that. I'd like to have that for myself, and a gang might just come take that money. Or the authorities might say, or someone might say, we're just going to turn you over to the authorities because we know better than that. But this man, apparently, this steward, these 2 stewards, apparently were not fearful of being identified with the master. No. This talent is not mine, but I've been entrusted with it. Now let's do some business. Okay. It seems like to me that just jumps off the page. That those stewards would have needed to be identified with the master. But the unfaithful servant, what did he do? He risked nothing. He hid the treasure. He buried it. Nobody could accuse him of being a thief. Nobody could attempt to rob him. He's not risking anything for the master. Are you? You risk anything? How about your gift of faith? Are you risking anything concerning faith? Or you hide it? No real risk there. When Jesus does come, I'll dig it up. Here you are, Jesus. Doesn't seem that the Lord thinks that's too faithful. Not only that the 1-talent servant proves that he doesn't know the master. Now, that's part of the play here in the parable, is that I knew you were this kind of a man. You're a hard man, reaping what you did not sow, all of that. So I was afraid. That's just an excuse. That is an excuse. That's not who the master is. Although in the parable, the master doesn't deny it. He doesn't agree to it either. But it's an excuse. Why didn't you use what I gave you for my benefit? Because you were like this. That's his excuse. That'll get him off the hook. Well, you know that this community I live in, or you know, you don't understand what I had to put up with in my home or in my family, or you don't understand how hard it was to break free of that bondage I was in and that addiction I was in. You don't understand what it is like. Well, you don't understand what it's like to live with him or to live with her. You don't understand. All excuses. What did you do with the gift that I gave you? You did not even take the talent to the bankers and invest it so that I would have some benefit. And as you can see already on your overhead, I say, faithful stewardship of the gifts is intended to be invested for the benefit of God. God is God. God doesn't need anything. But He expects us to use our gifts for His benefit. And what's the benefit? What does God want for His benefit? He wants greater worship. This is Father's Day today. He wants fathers who worship Him every day, every hour of the week. For that matter, He wants wives that worship Him. He wants children that worship Him. He doesn't want any look-alike make-believes. He wants worshipers. That's why He gives you a gift. And you use your gifts in the wise way that He leads you to be a good and faithful servant for His benefit. Why does a church exist? Because worship is needed in this world. Why does anything connected to ministry exist? Why does a corporate worship service exist? Why does a Bible study exist? Why does missions exist or evangelism or all of these things? Because worship does not. And He expects every one of us to use what He has given to you to advance worship in your own life first. It won't do to find fault with other people. It won't do to find fault with those people over in the Middle East causing Israel all that harm. It won't do. All this war and all that, what's going on in the street, it won't do to point fingers at them if you don't worship. If you're not a good steward of what God, and me, if we're not good stewards of what God has given for His benefit, not to make Him a more supreme God, He's already fully equipped. And the fullness of fullness is God. The fountain of glory is God. But what He wants us to do is work in such a way, Him working through us with our gifts, that worship in this world advances. Well, there's going to be a period of waiting, and some will have excuses for their unfaithful behavior. And what that will reveal is their lack of devotion to the Master. So Jesus is telling these disciples, I'm going to be delayed. The Messiah is going to be delayed. There's going to be trials and tribulations in your life. That it's not all bad. You're going to be given gifts. To use those gifts for my glory, and you, in the meantime, you will enjoy the use of your gifts. This unfaithful steward hid his talents. He seemed to have an outward profession of service to the master, but not really. He hid the gifts, and God doesn't want that. Matthew 10, verses 32 to 33. So everyone who acknowledges me before men, I will acknowledge before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men I also will deny before my Father who is in heaven. He wants us to acknowledge Him with all of our gifts. And I pray that for you and me, for all of us, for this week, to do that, to be reminded again through this passage, to take what the Lord has given us and use all of it for His glory. Every aspect of our life, the pain, discomfort, uncertainty, happiness, jubilation, relationship, loneliness, all of it used for His glory. And who knows? Someone might look at you and say, that woman is a worshiper. Worship will have advanced in your life, and God willing, worship will advance in their life as well.